They believed your journey would halt when they chose a different path, that your world would shrink, that you would wait by the pathside, ready to return the moment they called. But consider this perspective. What if your stillness is not an act of waiting, but the beginning of a profound inner discovery? Many people perceive quiet as a sign of weakness, but ancient wisdom teaches us that true stillness holds immense strength. It is not a withdrawal, it is a deepening of your roots. When embraced with clarity, it does more than make them aware of your absence. It gently invites them to confront the space they chose to create. You are about to see why your calm presence, centered in yourself, becomes the most powerful answer of all. The very ones who walked away without a second thought will be the ones who feel a deep unease when they realize your emotional world no longer revolves around them. And if you are weary of the endless cycle of seeking, explaining, and asking to be seen, then you have arrived at a place of great potential. Join our community by subscribing to the channel. Here, each week, we learn to turn disturbance into stillness, pain into understanding, and personal trials into your most resilient self. If you felt you were left behind, as if you were insignificant, remain here for a moment. The insight we are about to share may transform the way you inhabit your own story. Sometimes, a connection ends not with a storm, but with a quiet fade. There is no final conversation, no great drama, only an empty space. And the true challenge is this: you are still standing there, trying to find meaning in the silence, while their life seems to flow on, as if your river never merged with theirs. And then comes the common guidance: create distance, sever ties, become absent, remain still. The hope is that perhaps, just perhaps, they will feel the space you once filled, that your quiet will speak for you. But as time flows on, a different kind of ache can emerge. When you create an absence in the hope of being noticed, and you are not, your silence can turn inward. It becomes a hollow chamber echoing with unanswered questions, a space that struggles to mend. You step back, and their life continues undisturbed. You quiet your presence, and nothing in their world seems to change. What many do not realize is that a simple retreat no longer carries the weight it once did. The world is full of sudden exits, of people who ghost and then reappear. It has become a predictable current, and what is expected loses its ability to stir the waters, to bring awareness, to carry deep meaning. If silence was once a profound way to communicate a shift, its power diminishes when it is merely a reaction. They anticipate this move. They have felt this pattern before. Their heart is already prepared for it. Your absence doesn't register as a true loss, and that is why a simple act of disappearing is rarely enough. True detachment flows much deeper than ceasing contact. It is not about removing yourself from their sight. It is about recentering your own inner world. It is not a physical act, but an energetic one. You may have felt this before, when you see someone you once knew, and their very essence feels different. The way they carry themselves, the quiet peace in their gaze, their gentle neutrality. Suddenly, a person whose energy was once entangled with yours now stands apart, centered, undisturbed. And that is what is felt so deeply. This is where the first seeds of reflection are sown in the mind of the one who departed, not because you are gone, but because you have remained transformed. You are not displaying your sorrow, your lack, your hurt. You are embodying a quiet neutrality, a peacefulness that does not block, does not pursue, and does not require validation. This kind of stillness speaks volumes because you are still visible, but you are no longer available for their emotional currents. You exist, you flow, you breathe, but your life's river no longer empties into their sea. You have become a reflection that is at peace with itself. This gentle shift can stir their soul, because your presence is no longer an offering. It becomes a quiet mirror, a gentle reminder that you continue to exist, but your energy is your own now. This lack of emotional charge can plant a seed of confusion, as there is no narrative to grasp. When you vanish, they can tell themselves stories. This person is hurting. But when you remain calm, still, and emotionally centered, there is nothing for their story to cling to. You have not departed, yet your old self is gone. You are right there, but rooted in a new place. That peaceful paradox is what invites them to look within. And that is where true transformation begins. Not when you disappear, but when you deepen. When you stop participating in the old dance. When you evolve in your stillness, not to change them, but to honor yourself. When you no longer offer your energy for explanation. When you cease reacting and simply continue your own peaceful journey. So if you believed mere silence would suffice, perhaps you were focused on the surface of the water. The real change happens in the depths. It is not about leaving their world, it's about fully inhabiting your own. Even if they can still see you, they cannot disturb the peace you have cultivated. This form of detachment leaves no outward scars, but it dissolves illusions, because nothing is more profoundly moving than someone who is physically present, but energetically whole and independent. It gently forces them to face an unexpected reality. You are no longer trying to reach them. And they can sense that profound shift. If this sharing resonates with something deep inside you, I invite you to subscribe. Each week, we explore new paths to stillness, a centered presence, and the art of rebuilding your inner home for those who are ready to stop seeking warmth from sources that cannot provide it. A moment of awareness arrives when you see that your quiet no longer creates ripples in their pond, that they have grown accustomed to the space where you used to be. It no longer feels surprising or disorienting to them. It has become part of an anticipated flow, a pattern they sensed long before you took your first step inward. To be absent once held great weight. There was a time your departure would leave a resonant space. Now, it can often be just background sound, because the person who perhaps did not fully see you has learned to adapt. They have felt your rhythm. They know the quiet often comes after the storm. They have built emotional shelters for it. They even expect it. They will grow quiet for a time. They may think it has happened before. They will return when things are calm again. And that very expectation renders your absence harmless, familiar, easy to overlook. Your pattern has been practiced in their minds so often, its power to awaken has softened. When someone rehearses your absence in this way, they do not hold a deep fear of the separation. They feel at ease, because they never truly believed your stillness signified a permanent shift. They have learned how to sit through the rain without feeling the water. This is the nature of emotional patterns. So when you withdraw, hoping to cause a tremor, what you may find is a calm surface, a quiet stillness. Not always because they feel nothing, but because they are no longer surprised. You have become a predictable part of their story, the quiet pause before the next chapter begins. And that is when a deeper truth dawns on you. This reactive silence no longer works as you had hoped, because it has ceased to be a clear signal. It is a familiar hum, expected, managed, and filed away as a temporary quiet. Your emotional retreat has lost its clarity, and the more you repeat this pattern, the more secure they may feel in it. It is a profound realization that the very thing that once caused a stir now barely causes a notice. Not because they are unbreakable, but because your energetic pattern has become predictable. You have given them the map, and they have learned to navigate it without losing their way. That is the point of turning. That is when your own energy must shift, because an outward withdrawal without an inward transformation becomes unseen. You cease to be a discovery. You cease to be felt, not because you are not worthy, but because you are performing the same steps to a familiar song. When you disappear solely to be seen, they can feel it. When you become quiet, but still hold the energy of wanting to be followed, they sense it. And so they do not move, because they know that as long as you are waiting for them, you are still energetically there, still connected, still offering them your focus. But something changes, and I mean deeply changes, when you stop looking back and begin walking your own path forward. When you cease making silence a message for them, and instead allow it to become a reflection of your own journey. You do not hide, you grow. You do not withdraw to punish, you expand into your own being, That is the source of the profound shift. They expect your silence to say, "Please see me," but they never expect it to mean, "I am at peace where I am." And it is in that change from waiting to walking that your presence gains its true weight. Not loud, not sharp, just solid, quiet, and centered in itself. That is the part of the journey they were not ready for, because they were prepared for your tears. They were ready for your confusion. They were ready for your disappearing act and the gentle return that followed. But they were not prepared for your serenity. They were not ready for your peace, for the version of you that walks forward without glancing back. That version of you, the one that does not flinch, that does not explain, that does not seek to be seen, that is the version that dissolves the old illusion. That is the version that rewrites the story. Because now, they are the ones left watching in silence, uncertain of the path that led you to this new place. And paradoxically, it is not the volume of your absence that makes an impact. It is the quality of your presence in your own life. It is the way you fill your own cup without needing them to pour. It is the truth that your energy no longer reaches out, nor pulls back. It simply is. That energy, that stillness, that peace, that is a new language that they may not understand, and that can feel unsettling. Not because you have left, but because this time you did not leave a door ajar. You did not leave a trail of clues. You simply changed the direction of your own journey. No more waiting. No more checking for who is watching. No more holding your breath for a resolution that must come from within. You are no longer playing a game of seeking. You are cultivating your own garden. And that is the part they can no longer influence. Sometimes the most transformative posture is not to vanish, but to remain silently, steadily, without offering your inner world. You do not leave, you do not block, you do not run. But you also do not react, do not justify, and do not invite energetic entanglement. And that, precisely that, is what brings clarity. Those who engage in emotional games are nourished by your reactions. They are sustained by your patterns, the replies, the justifications, the need to be understood. When you disappear, they wait. When you return, the pattern resumes. But when you remain without playing, that is when the old structure naturally dissolves. Imagine someone at a chessboard, but you have simply stopped making moves. You are still at the table, a gentle presence, but you are not engaged in the conflict. Just stillness, just being. That kind of quiet can be deeply felt by those who rely on controlling the emotional flow. Because when you remain energetically serene, when you neither chase nor provoke, the sense of influence they once had begins to fade, and they are left in an unfamiliar space. Your stillness becomes the clearest of all messages. It says, "I see you, but you no longer move me." That change is subtle, but deeply transformative. You are still observable, still in their world, but energetically self-contained. You did not disappear. You simply stopped leaking your life force in their direction. And that quiet redirection of your inner resources begins to starve the illusion of their importance. They expect emotional withdrawal to be dramatic. They prepare for blocked numbers, heated words, long messages. But they never anticipate serenity. They never expect you to remain present yet untouched. That is the part of the puzzle they cannot solve. You may still cross paths, you might even see them, but your energy no longer bends toward them, no longer seeks from them. You speak when it is necessary, you act with grace, and when faced with a provocation, you offer stillness, not resistance. This is not coldness, it is clarity. It is emotional self-possession. That clarity is your sacred space. And to someone accustomed to emotional games, it is disorienting because it shows that their patterns no longer find purchase. Their words do not land. Their gestures do not pull you from your center. They cast a line, and you simply do not bite. It is like tossing a stone into a deep, calm lake and expecting a great splash, only to watch it be gently accepted without a single ripple. That stillness, that peace, that refusal to be disturbed, it is a language they are not fluent in, and that is what begins to dissolve their familiar sense of influence. This is where they may begin to question things. Why are they not reacting? Why did they not respond? Why do they seem at peace? These questions arise in their mind because they are not seeing pain. They are not seeing effort. They are seeing peace, and it is something they cannot touch. And what truly moves them is not your absence. It is your neutrality. It is the fact that you did not vanish. You just centered yourself. And in doing so, you have transformed the very ground you stand on. You are present but not available, here but peacefully out of reach. Think of it as changing the tune of a song without announcement. They still remember the old melody, but it is no longer playing. And that recognition creates a profound quiet because they now understand that access to your inner peace was never a given, it was a connection. And it was lost quietly. They might test the waters, a social media interaction, a brief message, a random question disguised as small talk. But you do not take the bait, nor do you punish. You simply exist without leaning toward them. And that restraint, that quiet strength, that is what releases their hold. You have stopped nourishing the cycle. You have walked out of the turbulent waters without a fight. And now they are left calling into a space that no longer echoes with their own importance. You have walked away energetically, without ever taking a physical step. That is the difference between being absent and being present without being accessible. Absence is an event, presence without need. That is a state. They see you thriving, breathing, living, but not for them. That reality slowly dawns. And while they are spinning, trying to understand your peace, you have already moved into a new landscape, one where you do not need their validation, where your calm is more eloquent than any reaction ever could be. And they feel it with great clarity. At first, they may observe you from afar, feeling certain. This quiet is just a passing cloud, they tell themselves. But then the seasons change, and your inner weather does not shift back to the old storms. That is when their curiosity can transform into something else, a gentle confusion. They begin to notice your posts, your shared moments, looking for a sign, a sad song, a pointed quote, a hidden message in a photograph. Anything at all that says you are still connected, you are still looking back, you still feel the old sting. But there is nothing, no coded messages, no bitter undertones, no emotional breadcrumbs left for them to follow. Just a sense of ease, a quality of peace they were not prepared to witness. Your digital presence is not meant to provoke, it is simply to protect your own serenity. You are not performing strength, you are genuinely living in your own peaceful rhythm. And that calm resonates more deeply than any argument, because they can no longer find the map to your emotional state. There are no more clues to decipher, no secret messages to decode. And the more they search, the more they realize they have not just lost access to your attention, but to your inner world. You see, people are not unsettled by your anger. They are unsettled when they can no longer read your energy, when your path becomes your own, when your spirit feels whole without them. Because those who find comfort in emotional patterns are reassured when they know your next step. But now, you are flowing in a new direction. They look searching for the you. They once knew between the lines, hoping your silence is still a story about them. But nothing connects. Your life no longer orbits their absence. Your calm has no room for their disturbance. That profound disconnect begins to echo in their own mind. It starts with a simple thought. Perhaps they are just hiding their feelings. But it does not end there. Days pass, then weeks. Still no signals, no missteps, no reactive comments. And that is when the thought becomes a whisper. What if they have truly found peace? That whisper can grow. It can find its way into their self-perception. What if I am no longer essential to their world? And once that question takes root, it can illuminate everything. Because up until now, they may have assumed your quiet was born of pain, not of freedom. Now, they are not so certain. And it is not just about what you are no longer saying. It is about what you are doing instead. Living with a lighter heart, sharing moments of simple beauty, laughing in pictures, all without a trace of sorrow. You do not appear like someone who is trying to be well, You appear like someone who simply is. That contrast can be deeply felt. They might have expected a struggle, a visible void in your life's routine, but you are not limping, you are walking with a steady gait. And it is not for show, not a tactic. It is just the natural state of a soul where peace has finally replaced longing. The silence that once seemed like a pause now feels like an ocean. Not the kind that invites you to cross, but the kind that is vast and content in its own being. And that is the kind of distance that dissolves the illusion of irreplaceability. Slowly, quietly, completely. Now, they may begin to wonder if the influence they once felt was merely a reflection, if the control they thought they had was an illusion, if maybe, just maybe, they were not the cause of your silence, but the catalyst for your healing. And that thought touches a deeper place than any argument, because it does not just say you are gone, it suggests you have grown beyond them. It whispers that their part in your journey has concluded, not with a shout, but with a quiet exhale. And when someone who once felt like the center of your universe realizes they are not even in the footnotes of your new chapter, it can touch a part of them. They rarely acknowledge their own story, their own significance, their belief that they were unforgettable. Because they believed your silence was about your pain, but now they are starting to understand. It was about your liberation. And that quiet realization can be transformative, because they are not just witnessing your absence, they are witnessing your freedom. The H used to reside within you. It was a companion on sleepless nights. It walked with you as you reread old conversations. It was the whisper you heard when you reached for a connection and found only quiet. But that feeling has slowly and gently dissolved, and the space it occupied is now filled with peace. Because now they may be the ones pacing, wondering, observing every move you make, looking for a sign of attachment, a trace of an old wound. But what they see is a quiet space, not a void within you, but a calmness where their turbulence used to live. You did not explode, you did not plead, you did not block or scream or send one last torrent of words. You did not try to prove your value one final time. You simply paused the explaining, paused the reaching out, paused the offering of access to someone who did not know how to hold it. And that silence, so clear and untroubled, now echoes in their own space. At first, they may have seen it as just another mood, a temporary break, a quiet protest. But time continued to flow, and the color of your silence did not change. It did not fade. It remained. That is when they might realize this was not a phase. This was a turning point, a new season they did not foresee. Because for the first time, your silence was not carrying the energy of hope. It was carrying the energy of acceptance. And nothing is more unsettling to a soul accustomed to being chased than a soul that has found its home. Now, the dynamic has found a new balance. You are not the one awaiting resolution, they are. You are not the one holding on to the energetic thread. They are. You are not the one dwelling in confusion. They are. And the very silence they once used as a space to hold you is now the space they sit in alone. Because silence is easy to dismiss when it is filled with expectation. But when a silence becomes neutral, energetically calm, almost peaceful, it becomes a mirror. They cannot argue with it. They cannot reason with it. They cannot fix it. They are left sitting with the echo of their own actions. They start to recall moments they overlooked, words they spoke without presence, times you reached out and they were unavailable. And those memories, once weightless to them, now return with a new gravity because they understand that was the last time you would offer that energy. They are not haunted by your words, they are haunted by your quiet. The conversations you no longer start, the effort you no longer make, the doors you gently close behind you, the calm that has replaced the old disquiet. And while they sit in that stillness, perhaps wishing you would reach out once more, a deeper part of them knows this is different. You are not trying to teach them a lesson. You have simply graduated from the class, and that awareness can stir something in places they did not know could be stirred. The disquiet that arises in them is gentle. It is not loud or dramatic. It shows up in the way they may view your profile and find no energy directed their way, in the way a message might go unanswered, in the way your name fades from their immediate sphere of contact and does not return. That is when a feeling of unease can begin, not because you departed, but because you did not try to return. You did not ask for their understanding. You did not make a final, emotional request, and that absence of energetic noise, that is what is felt most profoundly. They might start to reach out, perhaps not directly, perhaps with subtle gestures, a quiet like, a shared memory, a simple message after a long time. But your response is no longer guaranteed. Your stillness now has its own rhythm, and your peace has become your sanctuary. They are finally feeling the weight that you once carried, not because you wished it upon them, but because healing has its own consequences. One of them is clarity, and clarity creates a new landscape, one they may no longer know how to navigate. That is where their true reflection begins, and the most deeply transformative part for them. It is not the silence itself. It is the understanding that this time, you are not checking your phone. You are not wondering if they noticed. You are not counting the moments since you last heard from them. You have stopped waiting entirely. That is what transforms the dynamic, not your absence, but your inner fullness, not your distance, but your peace. Because now the unease has found a new home, quiet, spacious, and resonant. And nothing they do seems to invite you back to the old dance. There comes a point where your stillness is no longer just distance. It becomes a mirror, and the person who once turned away is now gently invited to look at their own choices, not through your words, not through any confrontation, but through the person you have become now, that their influence no longer guides you. You no longer plead, you no longer explain, you no longer show flickers of an inner life that is tied to theirs, and anything they attempt to do now lands in a space that no longer reacts. The emotional triggers they once knew are no longer connected to you. The game has ended, but they may be the last to know. They send a message, hoping for a familiar reaction. They share something online designed to spark a feeling. They create scenarios that used to draw you in. But what they encounter now is stillness, quietude, a gentle indifference. Not forced, not performed, but authentic. And that empty space where your reaction used to be, that is where they meet themselves. Because what they are witnessing is not anger, it is fullness. Not an absence of you, but an absence of your need. You are not punishing them. You have simply stepped out of the old arena. You are no longer playing the part they had cast for you. You once may have been the one to overthink, to watch for every sign, to read meaning into every quiet moment. But now, the only thing you are watching is the expansion of your own peace. You are not ignoring them to create an effect. You have simply turned your gaze in a new direction. That is what can be so disorienting. Because they believed they had more time. They assumed you would always be energetically available. They thought they could leave a door open, and you would continue standing in the entryway. But now the entryway is empty, and the door leads only to your own inner sanctuary. They begin to see this new version of you, and it settles something in them. Not because you are bitter, but because you are clear. You have become a reflection of the peace they could have had, and seeing you like that, strong, serene, self-contained, invites them to see their own role in your transformation. You carry no blame, you offer no indictments, but your quiet state speaks a truth they may not wish to hear. I am not who I was, and I am not returning to that version of myself. And for someone who may have grown accustomed to being the sun in your sky, that truth can be deeply humbling. Now, when they try to re-engage, they find nothing familiar. The paths do not lead where they once did. The energy is different. The expected warmth is gone, not replaced by cold, but simply by a self-contained neutrality. What they once knew is no longer there, and the version of you that remains does not bend. They might try to play the old familiar tune, a subtle message, a hint of guilt, a memory dangled like a lure. But the music has changed, and more than that, the dancer has left the floor. There is no performance, no seeking of approval, just quiet. That is what they cannot grasp, because the stage once belonged to them. They once set the rhythm. But now the stage is empty, the lights are dimmed, and you are no longer sitting in the front row, awaiting their next cue. You have left the theater entirely, and in doing so, you have reclaimed the narrative of your life. It is a unique kind of pain, the kind that comes not from being left, but from the realization of no longer being needed. That is what they may now feel, the quiet dissolving of an emotional dynamic they never knew they depended on. And the most poignant part of it all, it is not what you have said, it is what you have become. No grand finale, no final confrontation, just the gentle closing of a chapter, a decision that did not require their permission, a peace that does not seek their validation. You do not return to make a point. You do not reappear to show them what they are missing, because true growth does not perform. It simply unfolds. And when they look at you now, they do not see someone trying to win a game. They see someone who has already won, simply by no longer needing to play. Every attempt they now make to pull you back into the old current feels like a wave breaking against a solid shore. A reaction they once counted on is now met with nothing. Just stillness, just the unmovable presence of someone who no longer sways to their rhythm. That is what is transformative. You have become calm, but not passive, present, but not accessible. Your quiet is no longer a waiting space, it is a sacred boundary. Your silence does not cry for attention, it radiates a gentle peace. And peace, to someone accustomed to creating disturbance, can feel profoundly unfamiliar. They might send a message, even a small emoji. They might like an old photo, hoping to stir a memory. They might try to provoke a familiar response with old patterns or nostalgic games. But nothing finds purchase, because the part of you that once pursued them has come to rest. Your energy now is like a garden gate that is peacefully closed. They can see the beauty within, but they cannot walk through it. And that is felt in ways they may never admit, because they realize with each unanswered attempt that they lost something precious. Not your presence, but your openness. You did not become hard, you became whole. And with that wholeness came a new capacity, the capacity to observe without absorbing, to exist without needing, to remain still without clinging. And that quality of presence, it is the outcome they never anticipated. Now they may walk through the same mental spaces where your energy once flowed to them and find only a quiet stream flowing in its own direction, not because you vanished, but because you reconnected with your own source. You are there, but not for them. And that is a deeper shift than words could ever convey. They used to know the way to your heart, what to say, and when to say it. But now, every attempt is a step into an unknown landscape. Every move they make is met with your serenity. You have become the living embodiment of every moment they assumed you would never walk away. And it was not anger that moved you, it was awareness. The kind of awareness that needs no justification or revenge. Just a respectful distance, a quiet dignity. A life that no longer places them at its center. And now they sit before your calm, like someone standing outside a door they never imagined would close. A door that once opened with every knock. But this time, the handle does not turn. The welcome mat is gone, and so is the old you. Not in body, but in spirit. You are no longer hiding, you are shining. But your light no longer shines for them. It simply is without invitation or explanation. And that untouchable peace, that is the reflection they now carry. Because nothing humbles the part of us that seeks control more than realizing we no longer know how to capture someone's attention. And nothing is more mysterious than witnessing someone at peace, without needing anything from you, not even a final word. They used to feel like your center of gravity, but your universe has since expanded. Your focus has found a new sun. Your silence is no longer a tool, it is a state of being, one they cannot interrupt, cannot enter, and cannot disturb. And in that untouchable stillness, they finally feel the space you once felt. Because a simple truth can be challenging. Those who did not know how to cherish your presence often do not know how to approach your peace. So the question now is not if they will return. It is whether you will recognize the peace within yourself if they do, and whether they will even recognize the person you have become. Because the silence they once dismissed has transformed you. You no longer explain, you no longer perform, and you certainly do not pursue anyone who could not see your intrinsic worth the first time. But here is the part that truly matters. Will you continue this journey of growth, or will you allow their reappearance to pull you back into the old, familiar currents? Because they may reappear, perhaps not with grand words, but with a quiet gesture, a glance, a simple, "Hello, how are you?" But it is not about their next action, it is about your next intention. Are you now rooted enough to remain calm and continue on your own sacred path? If you have felt this shift stirring within you, if this message has illuminated something in your heart, then do not let it pass. Let this be your turning point. Use this quiet not as a space of waiting, but as fertile ground for rebuilding. And before you continue on your path, I invite you to subscribe to this channel and turn on your notifications. Each week, you will find gentle guidance to transform inner turmoil into profound strength, and to turn silence into your most sacred sanctuary.